Have you been curious about growing your plants in Leca clay bowls but feel a bit unsure about how exactly to move your plants from soil? You're not alone. Making the switch to Leca can seem daunting at first, but today I'm here to simplify the entire process for you. In this video, I'll take you through every step of transitioning your plants from potting mix into Leca clearly and easily so you can feel confident making the switch. If you're worried about your plants surviving the move, don't stress. I'll share practical tips to help ensure your plants not only survive, but thrive in their new environment. Now, I know the idea of cleaning roots and handling Leca can feel overwhelming. Trust me, I've been there, but I'll break it down into simple, manageable steps from properly cleaning your Leca to positioning your plants for optimal growth. I'll also introduce you to my top picks for beginner-friendly plants like pothos, peace lilies, monsteras, and more. Plants that are forgiving and easy to transition to Leca. Plus, we'll discuss common pitfalls and how you can easily avoid them right from the start. By the end of this video, you'll feel ready and excited to start your Leca journey. So grab your plants, your Leca, and your favorite pots, and let's get started. Here's what you'll need: a plant, a net pot, a cache pot, clean Leca, hydroponic fertilizer, and of course, clean water. We're going to use this plant today. This is a Hoya australis Lisa. I love to use Hoyas as demonstrations for soil to Leca transitions because they take to that transition so well. So plants like Hoyas, philodendrons, monsteras, peace lily, like I mentioned before, they are great beginner plants. Epipermnum groups of plants as well, the pothos group of plants, they work very well for Leca transition. So the first thing we're going to do today is take this plant out of the soil or potting mix. Okay, so here we are, and to do that, you just give the pot a very gentle squeeze. So giving that pot a gentle squeeze will allow the potting mix on to loosen up from the side. As you can see, that is loosening up really well for my plant. And just give that a gentle pull, ever so gentle pull, and there we go. That is my plant out of that nursery pot. Now let's take a look at this plant over here. So what we need to do is get this soil and organic matter off those roots. Now, some people tend to be pretty heavy-handed when doing that. It's really, you just have to be very gentle. You can use your hands. And as you can see, when I just tap that comes off. A lot of it is coming off just by gentle tapping. There's some leaves that have come off there. Those are some of the really old leaves. You can see that one looks a little bit discolored. That was going to come off anyway, so that's got nothing to do with our process over here. So just ever so gently, very gently. Now, I normally actually like to wear gloves when I'm doing this process because I don't really like to have that soil or potting mix under my nails, but I don't have any gloves today, so there we go. I'm just going to have to give them a really good clean when I'm done. But as you can see, just from this process, I've been able to get quite a lot of that organic matter off. So what I'm going to do at this stage is we're going to go outside and I'm going to use my hose to clean off as much of the organic matter off as I can. But before we do that, I do need to address the issue of trying to get those roots clean. So as you can see, there's a lot of organic matter, right? So the point is to try and get the roots as clean as you can get them. We are not needing the roots to be clinically clean, so they don't have to be so pristine. There isn't a speck of dirt on them. That's not possible, because in doing that, you actually end up damaging the leaves, and that's detrimental to your plant. So just doing it ever so gently. And if there's a little bit left here and there, that's, it's not the end of the world. Your plant in Leca is not going to die because there was a little bit of soil left. So let's go outside. As you can see, I'm using my hose here to take off what's left of the soil and organic matter. I'm using the gentle shower setting to just wash that off, and I get the roots between my fingers and I pry off that organic matter. In some cases, for some plants, I do use the jet setting to add a little bit more pressure to get that organic matter off. I also use the spray, use this opportunity to clean off the leaves of my plant to make sure they're all lovely and clean, and if there are any pests, they are taken off as well. All right, I am back from outside and I've got my plants here. The thing I love about this plant actually is there was more than one plant in that pot. So I've got two big ones, three big ones, and then I have 3 tiny plants, which works really well. But what I want to show you right now is the root system and the roots that I've got there. So you can see those are the roots there. Hoya roots generally, when the plant is small, don't tend to be very prolific. They're not as prolific as monstera roots, for example. So that is what you expect to see in a slightly young Hoya plant. And when you really look at those roots, some of them are not as clean as you might think. I mean, look at my hand over there. There's still some organic matter that's on there. So, not everything is off, and that's okay. So this is exactly how I would pot up a plant that is going to go in Leca. That's the kind of level of root cleaning that we're looking for. We're not looking for anything completely out there. The lovely thing about having so many plants come out of that pot is that I'll have the opportunity to show you 2 ways of potting up a plant in Leca clay bowls. So we're going to use the Wick setup and we're going to use the Submerged setup. And I've got 2 different kinds of pots to show you. Alrighty, so this over here is what I'm going to use for my Submerged setup. So I've got a little nursery pot over here. I think this is a 7.5 centimeter pot. And I've put additional ventilation holes in this pot using a soldering iron. I like to do that because it provides additional ventilation for my plants, which I love. And this is just a simple pot that you can buy, if you're in Australia. I get this one, I don't know about maybe Bunnings or just any place online. You can get the clear one. I love the clear ones as well because I can see what's happening with the root system there. So that works really well. And I have here a little pot liner. This is a pot liner. Again, you can find that in your local nursery. I get this from Bunnings and I love it because that fits really nicely in there, as you can see. And that will allow me to show you the level of the nutrient solution. So I'll be able to show you exactly where you're supposed to put your nutrient solution. So that is awesome. Okay, now this is the pot that I'm going to use for the Wick setup. It's got 2 parts. This is what acts as the cache pot. It's like that. It doesn't have any holes. And this is the nursery pot that I'm going to use. And as you can see, it's got a little wick that goes through, that comes through the top there. That's where the Leca and the plant are going to sit. And the wick goes there and sits within the nutrient solution. So the thing that's different about the Wick setup as opposed to the Submerged setup is in the Submerged setup, the Leca has contact with the nutrient solution, but here the Leca doesn't have contact with the nutrient solution. So yeah, the only thing I don't really like about this planter is because that cache pot bit is clear. So we're going to have water and nutrients sitting in there. Nutrients essentially being fertilizer or food. And what's going to happen after some time is that algae is going to start to grow there. So normally in my practice, I don't use this pot. I literally only just bought it so I can demonstrate what the Wick setup is doing to you guys because of the light. And probably what I will do going forward is maybe I'll cover this with tape, or I might paint it and leave a small window so I can see what's happening with the nutrient solution in there. And that again, that's just to stop the algae from growing. So let's get potting up. But of course, to pot up, we need the hero of the hour. This is my Leca. This Leca, I like to call it my Italian Leca. It's mine from clay pits in Italy. It's made by an Italian company. So it's not the usual red or brown that you're used to seeing. And I ran out of that. So I was gonna make this video and I realized I ran out of that. I only have this one, so I'm sorry if you use the red or brown looking Leca. This is what I've got. It works really well. I love this one. It's smaller pieces and they are irregular shaped. They're not the round usually of the other one. And there's so many advantages of using a Leca like this. And I talk about all of that in the video that I'm showing you at the end, and that's linked above, which is where I talk about my experience growing plants in Leca. It's a great video. It's a great starter video that covers a lot of topics, including why you might like to use Leca like this. All right, so now we're all about the repotting at this point. So I've got my pot and I'll get some Leca and I fill that about a third of the way. This looks like it's a little bit like half, but it doesn't matter. So a third or half, you don't want any less, especially if it's a new plant. And I'm going to put my smaller plants in this one. So I've got my plant here and I put it right at the top. And what I'm doing at this point is depending, so for example, if this was an alocasia or a monstera plant with lots of roots, you want those roots to be spread out. But this one has got teeny tiny roots, so it's not really going to make any difference. You want them to be spread out. You're not keeping them in a bunch. You want them to be nicely aerated. So I'm going to get my little one as well, put that there. What I might do in this instance is I'm actually going to get rid of this leaf over here because this leaf is going to be buried inside my Leca because I want it to be at that depth. So if that happens, then that leaf is probably going to die off anyway. So I've just used my hands and I've pulled that off and that is okay. So that is what I've got left. That is a viable plant. So in talking, my other little plant came off. So there. Okay, now this one is quite tiny. This is great that it's like that because then I'm able to show you levels and how to place your plant. So obviously it can't go all the way down there. That is way too low. So I'm going to hold it up here as deep as I can get it. And then I'll start putting Leca in and hopefully it's going to stay. So before I do that, I'm gonna fill up my thing and then, it can be a little bit fiddly. It helps if you're only dealing with one plant, right? So I've got a few in here. There we go. Oh, and now I'm just gonna pull that up a bit. So here's another little secret. When you're potting up plants in Leca clay balls, you're better off going deep. So you're better off planting your plant deep. And then if you need to, you can always pull it up, right? But if you put it up too high, you can't really squish it in like you would if you're using a potting mix. So that's always something to remember. So if you go too deep, no problem. You can always pull up your plant like this, but just don't go too superficial. So there. That is how I want my plants to be. So those plants are potted up in Leca and you can see the roots over there. You can actually see the position of those roots. So I'm going to put that in there. So that's my little cash pot and I'll put it to the side because now we're going to do the Wick one. Okay, so this is my pot. Now, the disadvantage with using this pot again is because this is not transparent. It's not see-through. I can't really see what's going on. So we're just gonna have to make do, I'm afraid. We'll just have to sort of guesstimate and, you can sort of see from the outside. I hope you can see that. That's kind of like, slightly less than a third, to be honest. It really is. I'm gonna put a little bit more. There we go. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is try and fish out that wick. There we go. Because I want the wick to be at the top, to be in and amongst the Leca, because that is how that Leca is going to get moist. So there we go. And you can actually determine how wet this system is going to be by using a thinner or a thicker wick or using more wicks, all that stuff you can do. It's all very lovely. And I'll just put in a little bit more So that is nice and covered. Now I've got my plants here. My plants will sit there, and those leaves are at the top. That is good. I'm happy with that. And this one, ooh, they're quite low. You can see that. I'm not happy with that. So I'm gonna just get rid of those bottom two leaves because yeah, that's sacrifices have to be made. There we go. That looks good. And you can see already, you can tell that this lower leaf, that's just not going to cut it. That is not going to cut it. That has to go. So that is what I'm left with there. And I can then position my plant. They'll keep falling. They'll keep falling. So I'll get some Leca just to position one or two. Yay. Hang on. There we go. That keeps it in position. And then I'll get this other one. Keep that in position. There we go. That keeps it in position. And do my final one. Okay. So now that I've got my plants placed exactly where I want them, I'm just going to fill the rest of this pot up with the Leca. Okay, I love the way that looks. It looks really, really good. I want to talk a little bit more about the Leca. So when you get your Leca straight out of the bag, it's very, very dirty. So I have spent some time cleaning my Leca. So I wash it, I take it outside, I let the water run clean until I can get it to run as clear as I can. And then I soak my Leca. I soak my Leca at least twice over 24, 36 hours. And I've got a video that I'm going to link in the description below, and it should be linked up there as well, that explains how you can clean your Leca straight out of the bag. But yeah, that is my plant. I'm just filling that up, filling up all those little holes, and just give that a little zhoosh, tap that down to settle the Leca. And when you're using a pot like this, which is lovely and soft, I just like to give that a little squeeze. As you squeeze your Leca, that pot, it allows the Leca to settle in, and sometimes you're actually able to put more Leca in. Alrighty, so I'm going to get my pot and put it on top of my cash pot. There. That looks, oh, that's the little spout thing. There we go. That looks good. And I've got my pot. So we're going to now fill these reservoirs with nutrient solution. So I like to use Clonix clone solution mixed in with root zone. Clonix clone solution is also called cutting clone solution in the US. And this is a rooting solution that also feeds the plant. This is a transition period. That plant is really looking to get those roots going, to help them learn how to live in a hydro environment. So that rooting solution is going to help the plant develop more roots. And I've got some pre-mixed over here, and I put that nutrient solution, and the level at which you put that nutrient solution is very important. So if you look at this pot over here, I have got my nutrient solution just below a level of 1/3. And the 1/3 is important because remember, when we were potting up our plant in this net pot, we put the Leca 1/3 of the way up, and then we put the plant. So those roots are at the top. So the roots are not in direct contact with that nutrient solution. And that's really important because those roots have come from a potting mix environment. They're not used to living in a hydro environment. So if you put that reservoir up too high, you might risk your plant getting root rot. And if it gets root rot, it's going to die. So it won't be that the plant hasn't adapted to living in Leca and Leca is bad. It's because you mismanaged that reservoir. So that's what's really important, especially when you're growing your plants in the submerged setup. So I've got my plant here in the Wick setup, and I've got my little watering can, and I put my nutrient solution in there. Oh, I'm being a little bit clumsy. There we go. That's a bit better. That is a bit better. All right, so this is good. It's got a very, very deep reservoir. And that's, again, one of the differences between a Wick setup and a submerged setup is in a Wick setup, you can have a very, very big reservoir, whereas this, you can only go as high as you can go. You know what I mean? So here we go. Oh, this little spouty thing, honestly, the design on this could be better, but there we go. That is the nutrient solution in that pot. You've got the little wicks dangling over there, and you've got some space between the nutrient solution and the beginning of the nursery pot where the leca is. So that wick is going to take up the nutrient solution to the leca and to the plant, and that plant is going to grow, and eventually some of those roots are going to start growing deep down into the reservoir. So normally when I've done this transfer, I will keep my plants with this rooting solution for about maybe 2 weeks to a month, depending on how the plant is adapting. And once I see a lot of root formation in that pot, again, why a clear pot is really useful. Once I see that happening, I then switch over to what is called a maintenance solution, or a foliage solution. So I like to use Foliage Focus by Growth Technology. If you're in Australia, you can find that in lots of very good plant shops, lots of places online. If you're not in Australia, you can find that online. You can check out the link in the description below with my discount code. And yeah, so this is really how you can move your plant from soil to leca. And of course, to have your plant succeed, you're putting it in a bright, warm spot where to help that plant, develop those roots and yeah, thrive. Moving your plant from soil to leca is just the start. There's honestly so much more you need to know if you want your plants to do well long term. I've packed 5 years of growing plants in leca into one comprehensive video. 5 years of growing plants in leca, advice in 1 hour, 25 minutes. Watch it next to make sure you're fully prepared for everything that comes next.